Right now, I'm primarily working with like pop country artists, but I've also done a bunch of rap stuff, a bunch of pop stuff.
You always go through a point where you're like, I have no plugins. I need every plugin in existence.
So I sat there and I was like, all right, I'm gonna make 30 beats today. So either someone bought them or I sent them to artists and they use them or whatever. Or since February, all of my new clients have all come from primarily TikTok, which is wild.
That's crazy.
This episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast is brought to you by Bliss. Bliss is a French audio developer focusing on developing creative and intuitive synths and effects. They developed over 25 different plugins for Windows, Mac, and iOS for all of my iPhone and iPad producers. You can discover plugins such as the Bliss Monolith, which is a mono synth they have for free, as well as the Bliss Arpeggiator, Bliss Megalith Wavetable Synthesizer, or Bliss Voices, the ultimate vocal harmonizer. Go to bliss.com, that's BLEASS.com, and use the promo code homestudiohangout, all one word, to save 20% off of your next order. Thank you to Bliss for sponsoring this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I'm your host, Drew, not joined by my co-host, Josh, today because we are not doing it remote like we normally are. I'm here with Jesse Shirts. Say what's up. Yeah, we are here at Studio 101, where me and Jesse both work out of. Jesse primarily works out of, and we're in a podcast setup because we're having a podcast day today. You can't see this, but there's a whole bunch of gear behind these cameras and lighting and stuff because we do at the studio. We have like a nice little side podcast thing that's been really fun. So I wanted to take advantage of the setup and have Jesse on and let's chat.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So Jesse, for the people, give like a 30,000 foot view of maybe who you are, what you do, and yeah.
All right. So my name is Jesse Shirts. I am a music producer and engineer from South Carolina. I just turned 24 this month, and this is what I do full time. Right now, I'm primarily working with like pop country artists, but I've also done a bunch of rap stuff, a bunch of pop stuff, but doing a lot of country stuff right now. Also play guitar, which is my primary instrument, which is why the country stuff
makes a lot of sense.
Is working for me. So.
And it kind of worked out for you that whenever you were doing rap before you kind of did more country stuff recently, that guitar got really popular in hip hop music too.
Yes, absolutely.
So and that kind of worked out really well.
So I started producing in 2017, which was like the SoundCloud, like Lil Pump era kind of thing. Yeah,
and that was like when you started?
When I started, but then it kind of shifted more to like the Gunna phase where it was all like electric guitar, trap drums kind of stuff. So that kind of worked into my favor
and
as
well.
And
a lot of ambient pad stuff with it'll dry acoustic or electric kind or something. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
For sure.
So when you got started, what made you want to get into music production to begin with?
So, I mean, I've been in music since I was a very little kid. Like, I've just always been obsessed with it. And then I started playing guitar when I was 9. And then just continued playing guitar. I started playing guitar at church. And I was super into the whole guitar thing. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I was in high school. And so I was trying to figure out like a career path or whatever. So I was kind of bouncing around between a bunch of stuff. Like at one point I was wanting to do like HVAC, or at one point I wanted to be like an athletic trainer because I did some sports in school. But then I kind of figured out what producing was, mainly because I was just interested in like, I didn't understand how songs were made. Like I understood like bands, like you go in and record with a band, like that made sense to me. But with like rap stuff or EDM stuff, I didn't know like what producing was. I thought DJs made music on their turntables somehow. Like I had no idea how any of this stuff was made.
That's funny.
So then I think I just Googled it or typed in YouTube or whatever, and I found a video of Metro Boomin making beats back in, I think it was like 2014 when I saw that video. And then I made my first beat in 2017 and then ended up actually bought a laptop from my friend Owen and just started on laptop and headphones and just started making beats. I started in Logic.
Very cool.
Cracked version of Logic.
Version of Logic. Yeah,
I bought it later. So
well, and now you're on Ableton, right?
Yes, primarily Ableton, and I mix and master in Luna.
Which is like a recent development, which we can kind of get into more later. I think everybody has the first DAW is a cracked version of the DAW.
For sure, yeah. Well, yeah,
Maybe not so much nowadays, but like back then and like.
Well, for me, it was like I spent literally all the money I had. I bought my laptop.
Yeah.
And so then I had to figure out, what to do. And then obviously once I started making money, I bought Logic, I bought Ableton, bought way too many plugins because like we all do.
I feel like you always go through a point where you're like, I have no plugins. I need every plugin in existence.
And then you get further down the road and you're like, I have too many plugins. So you just purge your whole.
Yeah. I don't use half of these plugins. I think I did that with like when I was starting. I worked at a studio prior. It's kind of similar to this when I had worked at a studio prior, so I had no need to buy plugins, and I just kind of had everything like available to me. And then when I set out on my own, I was like, oh shoot, I have like nothing. So I bought like every Waves plugin because that's what I was used to at that point. In I don't know, probably like 2015.
I wish when I was starting out, I just learned all of the stock plugins though, because honestly, like all the stock stuff.
In Logic especially.
Logic's really great. Honestly, I think I could probably mix full songs with Ableton stock 100%, plugins, 100%. Honestly.
We did an Ableton audio effects tier list. It came out like a couple
I think I saw that
ago. Yeah. And it was actually really hard. It was legitimately hard because there's some in there that I know for a fact that I love and they're my go-tos. And like Josh also uses Ableton and like we use very different things. Like he was like, I've never touched Echo in my life.
I love that.
And I was like, I love that. That is like one of my go-to delay plugins. And then he was like, I use the saturator all the time. And different like more destructive plug and like the harmonizer or not the harmonizer, what's the
Corpus or what?
Yeah, Corpus. Yeah, he was like, I use that one all the time. I was like, I've literally never opened this plugin in my life. And I was like, it's crazy that all of those are so good. And I know Logic actually has little less robust versions of that, but like still very, very good. Yeah. I was coming from Pro Tools. Pro Tools' stock stuff is
okay.
It's all right. It's very utilitarian, not very creative.
What's funny though, like at least right now, the style of music I make, I don't really use a lot of like super creative effects. Most of the stuff I'm using is because like with tracking guitars and stuff, like
it's all about like the take, right?
Yeah,
well, and probably used a little bit of that more in the hip hop space than
making loops or like flipping loops or samples or whatever, making them weird.
So okay, so I know this story. And I think this is actually very interesting. So you kind of got started in like, I think you said 2017.
Yeah.
And then you started just hitting the ground running. You delved into making tons of beats.
Yes.
Like
tons
of beats. I think people always say like have this mindset of, oh yeah, you need to do a lot of a thing, right? I think you just took that to the extreme. So maybe talk about like the beginning stages of you like getting good at actually producing, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people should learn.
Well, I mean, I just started out making like, I think I was doing like one beat a day. I mean, just like when you're first starting out, learning a DAW and like learning how to produce. Fortunately, the other thing too is fortunately I had a music background a little bit.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to like learn how to produce and mix and learn how to make music and like, what I mean? So I had musicality already. But
when you had been playing in church band at that point?
For at least 2 years.
So you kind of already knew like what a musical group needed to sound like what blending felt like. A lot of people don't even have that context. Like they're just, I'm in my room by myself and I want to make music. So they don't know like how a bass and drum relationship should feel or where the guitar needs to sit or anything like that. So that even then is kind of a leg up.
I had a leg, like you said, I had a leg up for sure. But started out making like one beat a day kind of thing. And then just started growing it as my skills grew. I started making 2 a day, 3 a day. And pretty early on, I started uploading beats to YouTube. So you can go to my channel and click like oldest and listen to all my absolute garbage beats. I'm glad they're up there though, because it's cool to like go back sometimes and like see the progress. Sure. But it was what I was in school at the time. Shout out to my parents. Basically what happened was I was able to, I just paid them rent every month and had super low overhead. So I was able to scrape by just selling beats on BeatStars and stuff.
Yeah.
And what's wild too is I think like 2 or 3 months in, I sold my first beat for like $15.
That's crazy.
Which
That's
is
actually
pretty crazy.
really fast.
Yeah.
Actually, because
and that changed my life because I was like,
I've tried to sell beats on BeatStars before as an established producer and like have had no luck.
yeah. I mean, it was super like,
It was also 2021, I think, when I tried for the first time, so it was way oversaturated at that point.
I think at the point when I started, it was almost oversaturated, but I was still early enough that I could kind of get in. But anyways, just kind of kept building it up, and then I got to a point where I was making like 10 beats a day pretty easily, and then there was one day in particular that like shifted everything. So I sat there and I was like, all right, I'm going to make 30 beats today. So I locked in for like 10 hours and made 30 beats straight.
Crazy.
And I think almost all of them got used, which is crazy too. Like they were all good enough.
Somebody bought them.
Either someone bought them or
them.
I sent them to artists and they used them or whatever. Like
that's crazy.
But that kind of shifted my whole like mindset or whatever with it because I kind of got to the point, like I remember the next day I was like, well, now what do I do? Like, do I just make more beats? Like, and at the point I kind of, and this is another thing we can talk about. Like, I feel like the music industry and the rap industry is different.
They're very, very different. Yeah, you're right.
But I was already starting to feel like replaceable. Like, okay, do I just make another 8-bar trap thing that anyone else can make? So at that point I kind of started experimenting with making different kind of music and recording all live instruments. So I bought a drum kit and was like tracking my own drums and like trying to do that kind of stuff. And I was making like alternative, like Dominic Fike kind of style stuff for a while. And then I randomly got super interested in pop production. Whenever Dua Lipa dropped her album, The Levitating, that album, what was it, Future Nostalgia, I think is what it was called.
That record screwed me up legitimately as a music producer for like months. Yeah. Because I was like, this is not only, it's a throwback record, it's mixed immaculately.
Oh, it's amazing.
Mixed and produced. Every sound makes so much sense. Every, like, props to her team for like all that stuff because every vocal is so well placed. It's so necessary. Everything is exactly what it needs to be. And I can't imagine anything not being there.
For sure.
But anyways, I had this very similar situation with that record too.
I got into that album and I started producing pop stuff and got into like the 80s, like synthwave kind of vibe, that kind of stuff for a while. And then randomly I was also into Dan and Shay at the time. So I made 2 Dan and Shay type beats and put them on my YouTube.
Like, for those that don't know Dan and Shay that aren't maybe country people,
it's like
they're very more on the pop side of country.
More than country.
Yeah.
But anyways, I made 2 tracks that were like Dan and Shay type beats that I put out on YouTube. And this artist from Canada randomly found them and asked me to produce an EP for him, like a country EP.
Yeah.
So I did that, really enjoyed it. And then randomly another artist hit me up to do a country, I think just a single. I think we ended up doing 3 songs, but I was just like super into it. And I was like, I'm going to actually try this. Like, this is fun and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so over the course of like a year, I really started to get more into country, like writing and producing, and then slowly shifted my content to be more country focused. So that way then now I'm primarily working on country music.
Yeah. Well, and it's like pop
country. I wouldn't say like true country fans don't like the type of music.
That's what Brad's for.
Yeah. I make like Morgan Wallen, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, very pop country adjacent stuff. Country with snap tracks and backbeats and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been getting into more like, I guess if you want to call it like traditional country, like with live drums and stuff too. But primarily I'm doing the pop country.
That's not your
stuff.
Pocket though. Yeah, your pocket is very much the pop country
which
stuff.
Works because like a lot of the artists that have only done like the traditional country stuff are starting to want to do that kind of stuff. So I've been getting a lot of work from people who haven't explored that stuff but want to try it.
I think you probably get the reverse as well. It's like you have pop artists or like hip hop artists that want to
try
a new thing.
Especially,
that is a way more accessible point to get into the country-ish world.
Especially since it's so popular on like TikTok and stuff right now.
Oh yeah, dude.
It's like country's definitely having a moment right now. I feel like.
Well, you have what's his name from San Antonio, the rapper, Hispanic guy, Mexican OT.
Yeah,
bro, like that. And that is very like Western country adjacent, but it's hip hop and trap.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a cool vibe. And I know obviously he's been doing that for a hot minute. That's been a thing in like the Houston area and San Antonio area for a while. I think only recently it's become popular because of TikTok, basically. Yeah. But I think you've been really good about your socials game. I think pretty much since the beginning, because that's, you know, you came up on YouTube basically.
Yeah.
And then you pivoted to short form when basically that became an option.
Yeah. Well, I started doing short form probably like, might be 3 years ago now at this point.
Yeah.
Where I was always posting on Instagram and stuff,
Sure.
like, and doing the type beat thing. But then I really started like
doing the showcase.
I made like, there was one day in particular I made a decision, I'm going to actually put effort into this.
I think me and you talked about this. Whenever we first met up down the street at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
What was that, like 2022? It was a year or two ago.
A year or two ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was a year or two ago. And we were talking about content, and I was like, yeah, I've seen a couple of your things. You were like, yeah, I just started like really trying, which is really sick because I had also just like kind of started really trying at that point too. And I had also seen like cool, you know, I gotten good outreach from it, gotten new clients. I know that's a big way that you get clients as well.
The past since February, all of my new clients have all come from primarily TikTok, which is wild.
That's crazy. Yeah. And I think you've also helped Brad really kind of delve into that world, the owner of the Studio 101 that we're in, Brad. You've kind of helped him dive into some of that stuff.
I think he said like 3 clients off TikTok.
Off that one post. Yeah. Yeah. That's super sick. I think he just put some ad dollars behind it.
What is interesting though is this past month, I think something shifted with the algorithm, or something, like maybe it's with the TikTok ban or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely slowed down. So I'm been experimenting with Instagram and Facebook ads to try to get similar results.
I'm seeing a lot more traction on Instagram lately. Like a good, for instance, me and Brooks, who does all the shorts editing for the podcast side of things. He and I have a podcast that we just do on the side. That's like the things we like stuff. It's very like low effort, low lift on both of ours. It's just a thing we do for fun. And so we'll do some reaction videos where he'll like throw up a video game or we'll react to a trailer. He'll cut it together. We have one blow up, like for real blow up.
On Instagram?
On Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, both?
Yeah. So I think we're at like 400K on TikTok, which is like,
that's a lot.
That's a lot. Especially for like, it's not a new page. So I don't necessarily mean it's not the new page blow up. We've already had that happen.
So it's just a legitimate
viral. Yeah. And then we had but the same video 3 days later did the same thing on Instagram. So I've noticed Instagram's started delaying their I guess it's called their shelf. Like I think people.
Because don't all the social media platforms test it to like on my TikTok, all my videos shoot up to 800 or 900 views, and then it either caps there or it
goes somewhere else. Yeah. Mine would do that at like 2 to 4, somewhere around there for the podcast episode stuff. It'll go like 200, 400.
Stop.
And then sometimes it'll get a second wind. And basically if it gets that second wind so Instagram, I think, is even more delayed. It's like the day one, it'll go out to like the tightest knit, closest people. And then maybe day 2 or 3, it'll go out to slightly more people. And then after that, it hits. Like
what's interesting though is because whenever I first started the social media thing, I was trying to, I wouldn't say I was trying to go viral, but like my mindset was like get more views. But once I made the shift to like, all I care about right now is getting clients. Yeah. The types of content I post won't go viral just because the type of content it is, but it will get clients. Like, and once I made that shift, I started actually getting clients off socials.
I think me and you talked about this the other day when we were talking about content stuff. And it's like some people, TikTok is great and like socials are great for business growth, 100%. How you use it changes how it works.
For sure.
What you put into it will change the output. So what I mean by that for those listening is like let's say you're just posting random stuff to TikTok. You're going to get random viewers because you don't necessarily, it doesn't know, Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts doesn't know what to feed your stuff to. If it's just kind of whatever music content. It'll feed it to general music people, and then that's probably not going to do very well.
You need very like specific
audience. If you're just posting type beat stuff, that's going to go to a certain audience that's probably not going to hire you.
Right.
That's not a hiring type audience. So what you've done recently that I've really enjoyed is you shifted your content to more of a, here's how I made this thing for this artist.
Yeah.
Let me make something for you. Go to my forum or hit me up or whatever.
Yeah, I have probably 3 or 4 types of videos, and that's all I make and post.
Yeah, which is
works. Which
honestly
is nice for me because I don't have to like sit there and think, what am I gonna film or make? You know,
takes the mental load off of like, oh, I have to come up and be creative. I think that's a big blocker for a lot of people, right?
It was for me for a while.
Yeah, it's like for me, especially first off, it's like I don't know what to post, so it's kind of hard for me to post because I don't know what to make. The thing that broke through for me was I was like, well, I don't know what to post, and I want to be like in more of the producer space of like, my goal is to find beginner producers and then help them like get better. So I was like, all right, what do beginner producers like? Free plugins. So I made a series of like 12 videos, 12 short forms, and like a bunch of them did really, really well. One of my second highest video on TikTok is one of those videos. It's like free strings plugins.
Right.
And it's like free piano plugins, the 3 best plugins. I did 20 of those like plugin videos.
I think a mistake though producers make a lot is they make one type of video and expect a different result. So for example, they're like, some producers I talk to, they want to get clients from,
but they make the plugin video.
But they make the plugin videos, which only producers are going to want to watch.
Yes,
so you have to make, if your goal is to get clients, you have to make videos that will attract
100%.
artists. Or if you want to do the producer plugin stuff, then you have to make that kind of content.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I do that kind of stuff if I'm working with a plugin company that gives me plugins. I will sprinkle that in sometimes, but for the most part, my goal is to get clients, where your goal is more of the
and like I'm gonna integrate the client stuff more later, but right now it's really like I'm trying to grow like the podcast, I'm trying to grow like the newsletter, I'm trying to grow like my brand. So I think
the moral for all this is like you need to figure out what your goal is, and then only make content that serves that one
goal
thing.
Yes, 100%. Because like you said, when you shifted, it got significantly less views, I'm sure. When you shifted the content, it probably got less views, at least up front. It got less views.
But then it turned into
more clients.
More of the right people watching.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Less overall views, but more, and we would call them like qualified views, qualified leads of people that are like actually interested in hiring you. So let's talk about how you got like here specifically, like in this building. So you were working out of you said you were paying your parents rent. And you were working out of that spot.
Yes. Well, so it was basically my old bedroom. I was just renting, and then
but you weren't living there.
Well,
or you were.
I was, and then I got married and moved out, but I didn't have a space to work.
Because you guys lived in an apartment, right?
We were RVing for the first year and a half, because it was dirt cheap.
Heck yeah.
And just all like the circumstances for everything, it just made sense at the time.
That's the most South Carolina thing I've ever heard in my life, dude.
And then we live in a rental house right now, but obviously I didn't have a space, so I was just renting my old room from my parents. So I just drive there every day to work.
Yeah.
And then, and I'd known Brad since I think 2019.
You had worked out of another studio before this one too, right?
Yeah, that studio ended up technically closing down. My friend Jesse G opened a studio in the same location.
Got it. And you did a couple things for him too.
Yeah. Well, I still work with him on some stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't actually work out of that studio. I just did some mixing and production stuff with that studio.
Got it.
I was still working out of my old bedroom.
Got your stuff.
And then, like I said, I knew Brad from like 2019, and then we ended up reconnecting, and he was thinking about expanding the studio, which he did.
Yeah, back in October of last year.
Well, I think we ended up talking.
No. The studio expansion.
The expansion was finished around October time, and then I moved in to the B room here at Studio 101.
Yep. And now, and that was also kind of, in my mind, solidified the like musical transition as well.
To doing like more country stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like you very much kind of timed your genre transition around your.
And I wasn't really trying to. It just all
kind of worked that way. Yeah,
for sure.
100%. Because like for those that don't know, Studio 101 here in upstate South Carolina does a lot of different stuff in general.
Primarily live band, like country
live
stuff.
Band, country, southern rock, gospel, Americana music, folk music, a lot of like those more earthy grassroots people.
What is nice though is like Brad occasionally gets rappers or pop.
Yeah, we've done both
that come in, and I'm able to work on that stuff. The stuff that he doesn't necessarily want to work on,
or doesn't really. It's not his forte. Yeah. I've gotten some of those too, and I'll do some tracking jobs or some like heavier bands. And Ian, also the other engineer that works out of here, like killer guy. No, it's cool that all the timing work, because it's funny. Me and you met for coffee.
Honestly, I don't remember when that was. That was
the day that you met up with Brad.
That's right.
Because
to talk about the expansion.
Because it was literally the same day. You were like, "Oh, I'm headed there right now," and I was like, "Oh, I just came from there."
Or no, what happened was...
Or is the other way around?
I was supposed to meet you later that day. Brad was coming back up here. He was like, you can come through if you want. And then you were here tracking a session.
Yeah.
And then we went and grabbed coffee and hung out for a bit.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was already here, like working on a session. You were like, oh, I'm going to go talk with Brad. I was like, oh, I'm already going to be there. I have a session that day. I started working with Brad probably about a year before that. I think it was like 2022, 2021, somewhere around there. I had already kind of started working here as like an extra engineer, extra hand. He was kind of getting a lot of work at that point and needed an extra hand. Ian was on the road with Noah, and I don't think he had, because nobody else was here at that point.
It was just Brad.
It was just Brad outside of Ian. It was just Brad and Ian running stuff at that point. So I got brought in, and then you got brought in, and then we expanded. Yep. And we added the Atmos room and your B room.
The B room, yeah.
And your B room, it's been pretty cool to see the sessions working. Have you been here when a big session has come through?
Yeah.
Dude, it's so cool to see the rooms working in tandem.
Mm-hmm. Well, usually whenever there's a big session, Ian is usually tracking vocals in the B room.
Yeah.
So
no, but it's just cool to see like that working very well. But then also, what was it? 2 weeks ago,
I think we had a podcast
in the Atmos
one room, in the Atmos room. Brad was tracking a band in here, and I was working on something in the.
You had an artist.
All at once.
You had a vocal session.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You had a vocal session that day, all in the studio. And like, I mean, it's a decently sized spot. It's not that big, to be honest. Right. It's like not the biggest studio I've ever been in, but it's not small by any means. Obviously, we ran like I had like 4 people crammed in that Atmos room for that podcast. That was tight. But okay, so you kind of landed here. The transition from hip hop to country more of like I'm tired of doing hip hop and I want to do something new? Or was it like, I feel like you said, I feel more like a utilitarian tool from making the beats, so I want to do something new? Or
kind of a combination. I mean, I kind of was already kind of getting tired of like just making rap beats.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
For sure.
I mean, obviously like you can be innovative and do interesting, cool things.
I think the best people are.
Yes, but what my experience was like, all of the artists I was working with all just wanted the simplest, which makes sense. Like there's room for the artist and like, that makes sense writing wise and stuff. But I just got bored of it. And I just was interested in other kinds of music. So that's when I kind of started doing more pop stuff. And then
making the transition over
doing
to the
more of the
stuff.
country stuff.
No, that's really cool. And the what have you found is like did you feel like there was a big hurdle or a difference like making that transition, either from an artist client like relationship or from like a production side of things? Like, did you have to shift some of the ways that you worked or anything like that? Because I kind of feel like that's a stark change, but maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's interesting too is I was never into country as like a kid or when I was younger. I didn't honestly like country that much. Yeah. So, which I think actually benefited me because I think a lot of the choices I make sometimes aren't your typical like production choices or whatever in country. Yeah. So that also helps like when an artist hears something that's like cool and different, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But I definitely had to learn how to make country music, and like your typical chord progressions are usually a little different.
Yeah.
I put a good bit of time in learning some of the like country guitar techniques and like how to like play country stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you bought a slide, started.
Well, I've been playing I've been playing slide guitar at church for.
Oh, really?
Like, I don't even remember when I started doing that, but like a long time.
That probably gives you a little bit of a leg up there.
For sure.
Because that helps with the style.
Well, what is interesting is playing in church, like at least the group at the church I go to, a lot of the stuff that we do isn't super like Hillsong, like CC. I mean, some of it is, but there's definitely room to like, not experiment, but I would always find myself doing things that are a little more country, even though I didn't play a little twangy. Yeah. So, it's kind of weird to think back how it all just made sense and clicked once I started actually making country music. Like,
and also like being here,
the
room becoming available, us being like, that's a leg that previously the studio didn't have access to that you've now brought.
I find it way easier to work with country artists too, because I feel like, and I kind of touched on that earlier too. Like the music industry and the rap music industry are like totally different.
They are. I think even like the pop industry and the country industry, especially, the standards are like very high.
Well, the standards are high, but I find that all the people that I work with now, for the most part, are super, like laid back, just nice people. To where like a lot of the rap artists, not all of them, and I do work with rappers still. There's a few that like I love working with. They're really cool. So I mean, this is like a blanket statement, but I feel like a lot of them are very like, it's almost like confrontation. Like they're like, they expect you to work extremely fast, which is fine, but it's like, I'm trying to think how to word it. Like,
I mean, that is kind of the expectation is like,
in a weird way, almost
you're here to make me be good and sound good and work for me. Not, this is a relationship where it's not a working relationship of like, hey, we're doing this together. It's like a you work for me relationship as a producer engineer.
Another thing too, and I feel like I've niched down even more than just pop or country. I like to work specifically with artists who have songs already written, structured out, ready to go.
Gotcha.
Which is another thing I guess we can touch on, to where a lot of the rap stuff was very like either freestyle, punch in, or they would just write to a beat on YouTube and you would just track, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's different.
Sure.
But I prefer to like work with writers or artists who write songs that are like ready to go.
That are more traditional writers.
Yes. Yeah. It's just different. Like, I don't think there's one that's better or worse. It's just, for me personally, I prefer.
Yes.
Well, after doing both, I prefer working with that.
It's really funny because like, I know a lot of hip hop guys that are like also great writers.
Yeah.
And not to say that doesn't exist, but you do find that on the lower mid tier levels of hip hop, it's very much the like, I have a hook idea and that's kind of it. I'm going to figure out what my verses are. Or I have a handful of verse ideas. I'm going to try a couple and see what they are. It's like, all right, the song's not done. Like, okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But another thing, I guess too, for me, my goal long term is like, I want to make hit records.
Yeah.
And I felt like most of the rap stuff I was working on, it's cool. It could have a moment, but I don't think any of these songs could like really go.
They're not really pushing the boundary anywhere. They're more being status quo of what is the general hip hop. You know,
and again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Your Drake beat, your whatever push a T type beat.
There's nothing wrong with that. But
no, it's just that's a thing. If that's what people want to do, that's sick. People got to cut their teeth somehow. It's not a bad thing necessarily. It just is not what you want to do.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, all right. So getting into like more of the technical side, general setup for what you use, you work off of a laptop.
Yes.
And you work off of mainly Slate VSX headphones.
Yeah.
And you have the other pair that you used.
I mostly use VSX.
Now you do?
I track on those. I mix on those. Everything basically.
Yeah. So you're basically fully like you have a space, but you're essentially a nomadic producer.
Yeah. I mean, I use monitors too when I'm producing. Like I have a pair of Yamahas, but primarily I'm on headphones.
Yeah. And you do all your final mixes on there.
Yep.
You mastering your own stuff?
It depends on the budget.
Gotcha.
I've been using Aria a lot for mastering.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm actually right now, I have a few mastering engineers I want to try out. So I recently kind of upped my price a little bit so I can start outsourcing mastering.
Yeah.
But I will master my own stuff, especially like if the budget is smaller. Like I'll use Ozone for mastering. Actually, Ozone, the mastering system's actually
pretty good.
Pretty dang good.
Yeah. The AI on the newer one is
on
really,
11.
really nice. Yeah. It's really good. 10 it's all right, but 11's like whatever they tweaked, they did a great
I've been
job.
getting good results with Aria though.
Yeah. I don't. What is Aria? Is that the one that you were showing me the other day that you like send it to or whatever?
Yeah. So basically, I think it's $10 per master, which is like awesome. So basically, you send in your mix file, and it's analog hardware, but it's all automated. So they have like robot arms on it, and you just put your settings in, and
it's similar to the Access analog stuff.
Yes.
That I was showing you.
So it's automated, but it's analog. So
gear. Yeah.
You get that flavor.
That's pretty sick.
The hard part though is the presets are pretty like defined, so you can't really tweak stuff. And if you send your mixes in too hot, it kind of squashes them too much. So, but once I've kind of figured out the sweet spot with it and the settings that work.
Yeah. And kind of like the volume aim.
Yeah.
Like dB level or
so for projects that don't have a budget for mastering, like an extra $100 or $200, then that works pretty well.
Sure.
And it gets it to a competitive level, and it sounds good. I feel like it lifts it and it opens it up.
Yeah.
It opens up
does
the
it
mix,
the wide? Does it give it the wide thing?
You can choose to widen it if you want.
So it gives you the option. That's really
there
nice.
are a few. There's like a stereo width option. I'm usually not messing with that because I usually do some stereo widening on my mix bus.
Yeah.
And you can like boost the low end or the top end. Usually, honestly, most of the time when I'm using Aria, it's called preset B, which is their default. I just kind of leave it and just use that.
Do you just use whatever that is? That's pretty cool.
You can preview it though too for free. So technically, you could like export the chorus of it
and just
and preview it, and you can try the different settings. So
that's kind of nice. Yeah, that's cool. I do. I don't know. I'm not a mastering engineer, but I do like. I can do enough to get by if I need to. You know, between Ozone and like I have enough plugins to make it happen, and I do mastering for people sometimes on like a cheaper budget. If it's like they send it to me and they're like, hey, we want this record mastered, and I'm like, all right, I can do it. I'm not a mastering engineer, so I'm not going to charge you like a mastering engineer would.
Yeah,
as I shouldn't. But yeah, I'm also trying to get to the point where I can fully outsource the mastering to somebody at some point.
Yeah.
Very similar. So, all right, mic wise, what are you using? General gear wise, what are you using?
For vocals lately, I've been using an 87 Warm Audio.
Nice.
I've used the Slate
ML1.
Yeah. For vocals, I've used the Warm Audio 67 before, the 47. But for vocals, I like the 87 a lot. For like the pop-y kind of sound. Yeah. I run into an Apollo Twin or Apollo Twin X.
Yeah.
I use Unison preamps. And then for guitars,
Are you baking on the way in?
I use the 1073 usually, and I bake that in.
Nice.
For guitars, for acoustic guitar, I've been using my Warm Audio 47 a lot. I've been getting a good result with that.
Nice. We also have that. What's that other mic? That
T-Garden.
Yeah, that
Those
T-Garden
are great
mic.
too.
Dude. I tracked an acoustic on that the other day. James Tucker's acoustic on that the other day, and I was like, daggone. He wasn't joking about this thing.
Heck yeah.
They're
great.
Yeah, yeah.
For electrics, lately I've been just going direct in a lot for my electrics and using plugins. I like Neural DSP plugins a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were talking about those. Which one were you using?
The main one I use now is the Morgan amps. They emulated a Morgan amps AC20 basically. I think the AC30 is on there. Maybe the AC15, AC20, and AC30 that Morgan makes.
Yeah.
Those are really good. The Tone King one is awesome. I have the Pliny one, which is really cool for like...
I thought it's for like effecty stuff. It's got a very specific sound.
Or interesting textures.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably really good for slide.
I haven't tried it, but...
Because it has all like the cool like layers of delay and reverb and stuff that kind of float around.
It could be cool for sure.
I feel like it could be cool for slide.
But I have a little Vox amp that sounds awesome, like Crank. So if no one else is here and I have the time to mic it up, then I'll actually mic an amp. But a lot of times...
we also have a Dr. Z.
We have a lot of amps
18. We have a Divided by 13.
Yeah.
And then a Egnator, but I think the Dr. Z is still on the fritz. Yeah. Unfortunately.
But honestly, I've been doing most of the guitar stuff just direct in.
Nice.
Which also helps for mixing too, because like if later on I'm like, I kind of want some more high end, I can just go into the actual plugin and boost it on the amp instead of trying to EQ stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Or more bite out of it, or this is a little too boomy or something.
So it is beneficial sometimes to do DI, but I'm also thinking about down the line potentially getting a quad cortex.
See, that's where I want to go. Is like I like the idea of having the flexibility of DI, but I recently, I don't know, for some reason I've been really enjoy baking everything like a lot of stuff.
What I'll do is I'll have and I think we were talking about this. I have a production session. And I mean, I do some like pre-mixing and I'll add effects and stuff. And if I'm like, sure, like I want this effect, then I export stems and then put it into my mix session already baked in.
So me and you do the same thing. Yeah. Because we were talking about this. Me and you do the same thing, except I go to Pro Tools and you go to Luna, but we both start in Ableton.
Yeah.
And we basically produce out the track like we are sending it to another mix engineer.
Yeah, basically.
And we prep the track like we are sending it to another mix engineer. And then we basically bounce all the stems out and we just open it up in another session.
Yeah.
So has that been super helpful for you? Because it's been like incredibly helpful for me as far as like not context switching.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I have a template. Basically, like the way I have my template set up, I can drop my stems in and then like it's kind of almost done. Which
depending
is
on the genre, I work in a ton of different genres. So I don't have like a true mixing template per se.
Yeah.
I have like a mixing template that's like, here's a bunch of options.
Sure.
And it's not, they don't always work, but my mix bus is on there that I almost always use.
Right.
And then like, if there's live drums, I have a drum bus thing that I like most of the time use, and a BGV bus that I've like kind of dialed pretty nicely with the kind of like keeps them level. It kind of basically it crushes them and like levels them out, keeps them nice and pinned. But for me, it's been nice because I feel like I'm in a different mode when I'm in producer Ableton creative mode than when I shift over to, for me, it's Pro Tools. Are you editing in Luna or are you editing in Ableton?
I do almost all my editing in Ableton. I mean, like if last minute I need to edit something, obviously I'm going to edit in Luna, but I'm way quicker in Ableton for editing.
Okay, yeah. I do most of my, so like I say that. I try to get it to the point where I'm sending it to, like I would send it to a mix engineer. So I do a lot of my editing in Ableton too. But all my drum edits, I still edit in Pro Tools because I hate live drum edits in Ableton.
Yeah, I feel you.
It gives me an aneurysm.
I try to get everything to the point where like everything's edited, timeline, like whatever I have to do, tuning, everything is done before I even put it in the mix template. That way, when I go to mix, all I have to do is just mix it and make it sound as good as I can, you know?
Dude, I will say, talking about outsourcing, the number one thing that I was absolutely had to outsource this year was my tuning.
Yeah.
And I have a guy, shout out Ryan Love. He's a vocalist in a band called Love that I've worked with before. He's a great vocal producer in Atlanta, and he has more recently been like, oh, I want to get into, vocal tuning. He wants to basically like be a vocal producer, where he works with an artist, just tracks vocals, but like can provide somebody like me or you. Maybe they're down in Atlanta. We've worked on a track together, back and forth. We send them to him, and he provides like a good final vocal, like almost pre-mixed, or at least like, some of the way there, that we can basically drop in and do a little bit of lifting, and then we're good.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, that's a genius idea, because he doesn't have to learn how to do all of like the production side or the mixing side. He can kind of learn like, I'm going to hone in on vocals. Yeah, he's great.
I honestly hate. Well, it depends. Some artists know how to sing and their takes are great, and so I just have to nudge stuff. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. But like some of the vocals you get sometimes are just,
dude,
it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
and what stinks, and something that I've started kind of thinking about is like, is this even worth tuning? Like sometimes I'll even tell the artist, like, would it be possible to like retract? Because like if I stretch this to make it work, it's gonna sound weird. Like. Mm-hmm. Like Melodyne is great for fine tuning small stuff. Like if they miss one note, like I'll just move that. That's fine. But when it's like every other word is like way off and you start moving stuff, there's like weird artifacts you can't really get rid of.
Yeah. I had to send Ryan a vocal or a track that was 5 or 6 vocals, and the dude's voice. He wasn't a bad singer by any means. But you'll know what I mean when I say this. His voice is really gruff and like rough and gritty.
So when you move it, it gets weird.
Yeah, it immediately gets weird. And it creates all of these harmonic, like he wasn't tracking on the greatest mic either. So it creates all of these harmonic resonances. And so like all of the blobs are like an octave higher or an octave lower, and they're like jumping all over the place. And he was like, what is happening? I was like, it's just sometimes it just does this. Just do what you can and like massage it in. He was like, okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure like my stuff wasn't freaking out.
Actually most of the work I do is remote. And so what I've started doing is, when I'm first like getting information about the artist and asking them about the project and stuff, I always ask them, are you recording at home? Or I ask them, do you record at a studio or do you record at home? And if they record at home, I always ask them, would you be willing to work at a studio with an engineer?
Yeah.
And then what I try to do is, if I know someone in the area, I'll link them up with them, and then they can track with that other producer engineer, or I'll find a studio in the area for them and get them connected.
With that person,
and I always explain it to them. I'm like, if you are going to invest all this money in me producing this track, spend a little bit more money and get your vocals
done
to sound great, because like the track might sound awesome. It might be a really cool vibe, but if the vocals sound like garbage, like the song's not going to do good,
Yeah. The vocal, I mean, it's, we're not making instrumental music here. So the vocal is like the most important thing.
I'm working with this artist right now, and the track is awesome. Like the song is really cool and interesting. The track we came up with is really awesome, but she like records on her phone mic.
Oh.
And like,
tough.
It's not good. And so it stinks because like the song could be really great and awesome. And I tried to get her to work with a studio, but she wanted to just record in my home, which is fine. Like at the end of the day, like the client's always right. But it just stinks because like the song could be really great, but it probably won't go anywhere. Because
it's fine. Yeah. And it's just, that is what it is. It is what it is.
But that's what I've been doing recently, is I've been really trying to like, let's make sure the vocal tracking and stuff is like
100%. Well, let's talk about Luna specifically. What made you try Luna out, and what do you really like about it? Because you're one of the, I've used it before. I think I told you I used it for a vocal tracking session in North Carolina earlier last year, and I thought it was really interesting. Some of the workflow stuff is a little weird, at least whenever I was using it. But like I thought tracking in it was easy. Using it like you would use Pro Tools or mixing in it, I feel like would be the best way to use it. So just kind of tell me, like, explain to me, like, what was your thought there? And then also, how's been your experience with using it?
So I started using it. So my friend Donnie, well, you know Donnie, he's the guy that does Atmos stuff. He was telling me about it, specifically about the API extension kind of thing. And they make a Neve extension. Okay. So I got the extensions. And when I first started, I was kind of using it almost like a mastering thing. So I was still mixing and everything in Ableton.
Like stem mastering in it, essentially.
So I'd bounce out my stem groups and then just run it through the summing, which sounded great. But then, well, it really does sound awesome. Like you're just going to have to try it. Everyone out there should just try it.
It's free. If you have UAD stuff, it's free.
The extensions are. That's
the extensions are.
You might be able to. I think you can get a trial though.
Yeah.
So get the trial and just try it.
Yeah, just run some stuff through it.
And so I was getting really good results with that. So then I was like, well, let me just try mixing in Luna. So then I built a mix template, and I was getting really good results. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing this. Now I will say, like, I wouldn't track or produce in Luna just because of the workflow and the way it is. Like,
yeah, vocal tracking was a little tough,
but and that's the thing though, like all my editing and everything is done. So all I'm doing basically is dropping my stems in to the template. And most of the work honestly is being done on the buses anyway. So like on the drum bus, on the vocal bus.
Well, because you're already doing on the production session in Ableton, you're already doing a pretty good bit of lifting there at the track level.
And like all the tracks they sound good already. So like I'm not like having to I wouldn't
surgically cut or anything.
So it's not like I'm doing that in Luna.
And you're also not getting tracks to mix from people.
Yeah, I mix for other people too, and I mix in Luna.
Oh, really? Have you come into some situations where that's been a little trickier in those situations for stuff that you haven't produced?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been times where I've had to like take a vocal, put it in Ableton and edit it and then put it back into Luna.
Okay, yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Which is fine. Like,
that's
fine. But honestly, like I could make, I don't know. To me, it's just worth it though with the summoning extensions and the tape emulations that are built into Luna. It sounds great.
No, yeah. I thought about building out a mastering template in Luna and it being like when I do have to master, because I do enough every year of mastering. I thought about like learning more about it.
Well, if you could do stem mastering, especially
it's stem mastering
with the extensions and then the tape emulations and stuff, that could be really cool for mastering.
Yeah. That was kind of my thought, is maybe delving into that. And that would be my way of like using it a little bit more. I do have another friend who is also mixing in Luna, my buddy Ryan Lau. He was using it for a while for a bunch of different things, and like he's a Logic guy. And so I feel like he said it wasn't too big of a jump.
No, for him. What's funny is not all of them, but a lot of the shortcuts in Luna are the same as Pro Tools.
Yeah, they are. Like, I noticed that.
And I mean, I've used Pro Tools a bunch too, so it wasn't like a crazy learning curve. Like, it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple.
No, yeah, it seems pretty easy. I'm probably gonna have to delve into because I think I used the API extensions, but I didn't use the Neve ones.
So I use API on all of on the drum bus, my bass bus, my instrument bus, and on the master bus, and then I use the Neve extensions on the vocals.
That's
which is interesting. Which is interesting too, because then you can get a little more separation that way as well.
Because you're using the different. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
True.
Which is kind of cool.
Do you feel like you can drive the Neve ones similarly to like a hardware unit?
Yeah.
We have Neve stuff at the studio. We have 16 channels.
I honestly don't really drive it that much. I kind of just leave it on the default and it sounds good, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those things that I've always wanted to try, is the Neve thing.
The Oxide tape
I haven't used that one, yeah.
What's weird, so there's the ATR tape and the Oxide tape built into Luna. If I use the standalone plugin versus the built-in one, I get different results, which is interesting.
Interesting.
So I don't know what that's about, but basically all of my stems, all of them all have oxide tape on them, which is interesting. And it just like, it lifts it, gives it some more color and saturation.
Do you feel like it separates them a little bit too? Like
Yeah.
they feel more individual rather than like so like over glued, I guess, is like, or like smeary.
It just does a cool thing. Like it
just does the thing.
It's just it's honestly, I feel like it's a cheat code. Like I literally drop all my stems in, put oxide tape on all of them, put the emulations on the buses, and then like it lifts everything to a point that's like, I don't have to do much more, you know?
Yeah. There's like,
I mean, obviously I'm compressing and doing other stuff as well, but like,
for sure. Yeah. I've liked the idea of having like how you're talking about having the APIs on like really more of the instrument based stuff. And then like the Neves on like your vocals and like having certain things for certain buses that have a character thing for each bus to kind of help give that kind of separation or like shape or whatever that, I don't know, just kind of helps with the separation. And I don't know. I've always thought that was an interesting idea. It's just something I've never done. So
you just have to try it. And
I just got to try it and see if I like it.
I'm pretty sure you can get a demo for the API and the Neve extensions. Pretty sure.
Probably the API for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So I think there's like two more things I want to talk about. So firstly, we talked a little bit about socials. We talked a little bit about the like how we think people need to kind of focus themselves a little bit. What do you see from like a social media perspective and like, especially like we're talking about gear, the very like a gear heavy social media people, like what do you see that a lot of these people are doing that aren't necessarily benefiting them at all for using socials?
I think like what we were talking about earlier, just not having a
clear
vision or a clear goal with, because like I was saying earlier, once I had the mindset shift of like, okay, what is my specific goal for my content? Like, I think you just have to have a very specific goal and a specific outcome that you want to get out of your content. Obviously, like you have to play with it and iterate on it. And then once like I had to do that too. Like once I kind of started seeing some success with specific types of content, I would iterate on it and then, you know.
Well, I think you remember you telling me that you changed your intake form completely whenever you also made that shift.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is I have a specific funnel and specific calls to action in my video.
So maybe walk us through that, like ideally walk us through that like client journey, like how for how you have it set up.
Yeah. So I guess like the main piece of content that gets me clients is basically a video where I'm like, hey, I'm a music producer. This month I'm looking for 3 country artists, whatever I say.
Hit the link.
And then I'm like, and then I say, if that's you, send me a message or hit the link in my bio. So if they hit the link in my bio, they'll fill out my form. That's another thing too. The only link in my bio is my form.
This is something I heard. This is something I heard yesterday, actually. I was listening to an Instagram guy talking on a podcast, and he was like, screw link trees, screw all of these things. You have one thing.
I used to have all that set up. I had a link tree with my portfolio playlist on Spotify, my YouTube, my whatever. And it's like, if you just have a very clear, like, if this is you, go here and do this one thing without distractions. Because, like, if there's distractions, they hit the link and there's 5 different things.
It's like, oh, he's got a YouTube channel. I'm going to check that out.
Or they're just going to be like, with our attention span being so short, it's like, I don't care, and they're just not going to do it. So,
well, and also the in-app link follower is already filled with friction most of the time. Like, you click on a link in Instagram or TikTok, and it doesn't open your browser. It opens an in-app link follower. Yeah. And then you have to either like open it in your browser or fill out the thing inside that app. And it doesn't keep all of your information. It doesn't use all of your autofill and you can't navigate back to it if you go away. So like you're basically gone if they hit that X.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I heard literally yesterday, I was listening to somebody talk about it, and they were like, yeah, the number one thing that you can do for a higher conversion of like client is get rid of everything. You have one thing, whatever thing you're trying to drive people to.
Yeah.
Like for some people, that's a newsletter. For some people like us, it's like a type form
and you can have periods where you change it too.
Yeah.
Like maybe like this month you're just trying to get clients locked in. But then maybe next month you want to promote something, maybe you can change it. But
yeah.
I would say just like whatever you're trying to do. Well, the first thing is pick one thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're not you're not successful with any of the 1,700 things you're trying to do, pick the one thing that's most important and just drive everything to that until that's locked in, you know?
For sure. So people click on the link.
Yeah. So
where does that go?
Right now it's just a Google form, and I'm probably going to try to like optimize or maybe even change from a Google form to a different type of form. But I've iterated it over time. So basically I just fill in their name, put in like their phone number so I can contact them. I asked them where they found me so I can like track what's working, what's not.
Yeah.
And then basically I just ask them like, you know, tell me a little bit more about your project. I have some qualifying questions too. Like one of them is, are you willing to put 10 years into your music career without getting any results? That's an interesting one because that shows if they're actually serious or not. Another one is, are you willing to promote your music on social media every day?
Yeah.
Because if an artist isn't
kind
serious,
of
like they're probably not going to invest in this. And then I have the last question is what are the funds you've allocated to this project? So I can, that way.
A nicer way of asking what's your budget.
One, it's a way of asking what your budget is. I mean, I have a set price, so I'm not really.
Yeah.
But it tells me if they don't have money, I'm not going to follow back up with them. So it also saves me time because I used to follow back up with every single person and have calls throughout my whole week, and most of it was just a waste of time. Now I can just, you know, this person has some money.
Pre-qualifying them before you even get to the phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which saves time for everybody.
Yeah. Why if they don't have the money to spend, even remotely spend on what your cost is.
I don't want to waste your time or my time.
Yeah. It also lets you know that if you get into the conversation and they go, well, I'd like to have a real drum set, or I'd like to have, you know, like as a part of the project, you can say, all right, well, you know whether that's going to be feasible for the project or not, because they already gave you like a rough amount of what the project, because you're gonna have to hire somebody to do that, or you're gonna have to do it here, and you have to pay like Chris or somebody to do it.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of times they don't say a specific number. Like a lot of times I'll have people that are like, I don't have a specific budget, but I have a full-time job and I get paid every 2 weeks or something. So then I know, okay, well, they have a source of income. So if we have to split this up over a payment plan or whatever, we can probably make it work. So then I know, okay, well, this person's at least worth following back up.
Yeah. And at least having the conversation, because they seem like they're interested. They are interested enough to say, I have a full-time job and I'm willing to spend money on it.
Exactly.
Means they are probably in the mindset of, and obviously all of the other pre-qualifying questions as well, really lean into the like, oh, this person obviously cares.
Yeah.
So let's at least have the conversation and make sure that I'm not just like overshooting their budget by crazy.
For sure.
Okay, so then after that, like you have the conversation. Is that kind of how it goes after that?
Yeah, so typically what I'll do, if it's someone I'm going to follow up with, I'll text the number they gave me. You know, just be like, hey, I'm Jesse from TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And then we might text for a little bit, and then I'll be like, hey, is it cool if I send my schedule link so you can book a call to talk about our project?
Yeah.
Actually, I've been starting with that actually recently. I've been like, I'll send the link first and I'll be like, hey, this is Jesse from Instagram or TikTok. Go ahead and fill out, or go ahead and pick a time so we can book a call to talk about your project.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably
the best way to do it. Because then it's just streamlined. If they're serious, they'll do it. If they don't, then I'm not wasting time.
Yeah, then you're not having a conversation.
I found that the more streamlined and more niche you can get with everything, the higher it converts.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you can get the people that care and that want to and that have the money and that have the time and all the above. No, that's really cool. And then you went and you do the project. And do you have any like pre-production questions you generally try to follow in that call?
Yeah, so typically I'm asking, because I was talking earlier about how the main thing I work on is songs people have already written.
Yeah.
So I kind of ask, okay, do you have a specific song you're wanting to start with? I'll ask them, are we doing a single or you want to do a whole project?
You have
I'll
demos I can listen to.
I'll ask them for demos. I'll kind of ask them like stylistically, what are you trying to do? Are we even a good fit?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I always have them send me a playlist with similar songs as references. So I can just know like, okay, this person wants to do like a Zach Bryan style song or a Morgan Wallen style thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I need that, and I need a demo of the full song so I can map it out. And
yeah, because you pre-map your stuff.
Yep. I take normally I just have them send me a voice memo with you playing guitar or piano or whatever and singing it. And then I'll put it in Ableton. I'll warp the whole song so everything is on a grid.
Tempo, yeah.
And I have a tempo, and I'll map out verse, chorus, whatever, learn the chords, and then typically it's acoustic guitar is the first thing I'll track, so I'll just track the main rhythm acoustic and then just build it out from there. And then I use AI to extract the vocal from the demo so I can put the vocal in.
Yeah, me and Brad were talking about that what is it, lol.
.ai or something.
Yeah, lol.ai that you
Actually,
use.
I've been using the FL Studio stem extractor for that.
Oh, really? That's sick. Shout out to the FL people.
I'll do that so I can send them the track with their vocal as a reference so they can hear, like, this is what it'd be like
when you track
once we track vocals.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yep.
That's really sick, dude. So I think last thing we'll talk about, because I think we're over an hour. Yeah, we are.
Dang.
Hour 5. Let's go. I got that sense. Last thing, let's talk like if you're listening to any music or anything or any podcast or anything like that, give me some recs. Some like, what's something that you've been listening to that you find is underrated? And what's something that you listen to that you're just like really stoked on?
I'd say music-wise, I'm going to pull up my phone.
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it. Yeah, and it can be music, it can be podcasts, and you can do for both of those.
So musically, lately, I've primarily just listened to like popular country stuff because that's what I'm making, and it's what I enjoy. Obviously, Post Malone just dropped the one with Morgan Wallen. Dude. So good.
That is a good example of a song that I feel like is a very you song.
Yeah, I love that. That's
genre, like that genre combination of like Posty and Morgan Wallen, like great. Doing that is like is very you.
Tyler Hubbard's new album is amazing. Shabuzi's cool too. I've been listening to him a little bit. As far as music, but I started doing audiobooks recently.
Oh heck!
So do you know Patrick Bet-David?
No.
PBD. Check him out. He's I think he's worth like $500 million or something.
Daggone.
Honestly, I listen to like business podcasts and books more than music lately.
Yeah, you too.
But his book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely, I started that.
Ooh,
I'm 42% done.
Nice.
That's been a good one. I listened to a lot of Alex Hormozy. I mean, I know you listen to him.
Yeah, I love Hormozy stuff.
That's about it lately.
I've been really into book-wise. I've been jamming. I just finished actually Andrew Wong. You know Andrew Wong, YouTube music producer. He wrote a book. Fantastic book.
That's cool.
Fantastic book. I actually think everybody who's like in the I need to do content, but I also I want to be like a music producer needs to read that book.
I'll have to check that out.
Because it is literally he goes through his entire journey. I mean, and dude is very successful.
Right.
Has like he was on the music producer course game before pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So he was like on that early. He was building plugins. He's got stuff everywhere. I think he's got a Baby Audio like plugin, the Transit plugin, and he talks about like literally all of this stuff where he was like a lot of that stuff came because he like didn't want to do YouTube anymore.
Yeah. Right.
But at a time he wanted to do YouTube because he didn't want to produce for other people anymore.
Yeah.
And like now he's kind of circled back to, I really like making stuff with people. So he's like doing like a lot of sync work and a lot of like client work and stuff, like scoring for people and stuff. So it's like the way he like has always driven towards, he's like, okay, I'm really feeling this direction. I'm going to like gung ho this direction as much as possible. And I'm going to make it work. And then when it's time to pivot, he's going to pivot. He's going to follow his gut on that. It was a very good book.
That's cool. I've been getting into reading again. I go through periods where like I read a lot and then I stop reading and then I get back into it. So I've been reading a lot again.
Yeah. I'm on that Audible monthly subscription getting me those credits, dude. But that was a really good one. And then the other one I read was Noah Kagan's $1 Million Weekend, which I think also everybody should read.
Heck yeah.
Because it's
I just put a list together of stuff too that I want to.
Yeah. Oh, I'll send you. So there's for everybody who's listening as well. It might not exist by the time that this episode comes out, but on AppSumo, his company, you can buy the book for $7.
Oh, cool.
And like get a physical copy or a Kindle copy.
Nice.
Or an Audible copy. It doesn't really matter.
I'll check that out.
It's like just a coupon for the amount of money of whatever any of them cost.
I kind of enjoy listening to audiobooks and reading more than listening to music because it gives you like a nice break from, like, if you work on music all day, a lot of times I'm like burnt out on it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. No, I definitely agree. But yeah, those two have been mine. Those are really good. I'm gonna have to check those that you wrecked because I'll probably get those. I have an Audible credit coming in like next week, I think. Nice. So I'll probably snag one of those. But dude, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
It's been cool.
Yeah, dude. Been a good hour or so. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Check out Jesse if you want to drop your socials and handles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, everywhere it's at Jesse Shirts Music on Instagram, TikTok. Yeah. My YouTube is Jesse Shirts Music. I haven't posted there in a while, but
you can go check out. For what we were talking about, you can go check out like his heavy beat grinding days.
Yeah. There's like over 1,600 uploads.
That's crazy. That's nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check out Jesse, all of the stuff. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the sponsor list, by the way. You guys should go check that out. Also, we just got a sponsorship by a French audio development company, and they make really cool stuff. So you guys should go check that out. The link will be in the description for all of that stuff as well. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast. If you could take the time to like, subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio platform, go ahead and make sure you're subscribed and also leave a rating and a review. It helps the show get out to new people, and we're trying to grow every single week. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast, and we'll see you next week.